everyone, my name is Kayla. Welcome back to K's Hidden Shelf, where we talk about books, and today I want to share with you my non-spoiler review for The Voice of War by Zack Argyle. This is a debut novel by Zack, and it is a self-published book as well. Not only that, it is actually the winner of the Indies Today 2020 Best Fantasy Award. This is the first book in the Threadlight trilogy, and even though it does have some familiar feel to other fantasy books that I've read, it does well to stand on its own and does have some unique traits in it. Let's go over the synopsis. While preparing for the birth of his first child, Chris Valerian is tasked with uncovering the group responsible for a series of missing threadweavers, those able to see and manipulate threadlight. With each failure, the dark voice in his head grows louder, begging to be released. A young girl from a secret city in the center of the Feywild veers off course to explore the streets of Alkea, never expecting that her journey would end in chains. Far in the deserts to the south, a young man's life changes after he dies. When Chris learns who is responsible for the missing threadweavers, they come for him and his family. He must do everything in his power to protect those he loves, even if it means trusting strangers or worse, the growing voice in his mind. Together, these three will change the world, whether they intend to or not. So in this, we see three different points of view. The first being Chris Valerian, who's a military man. He's seen war in past, battle, and he's also got this inner struggle going on with this voice in his head that keeps begging to be released. And not only that, he is also trying to investigate these missing threadweavers who are people with the ability to see threadlight, which has to do with the magic system in this book. All of this while he should be enjoying the happiest moment, or one of the happiest moments in his life with his wife, Ariel, and that's welcoming their child into the world. Next, we have Laurel, who is a teenager who does what teenagers do best, and that's push against authority figures and rules. And after that, we have Alvarax, who is a young man that, well, we'll leave it there. So there is a magic system in this called thread weaving. And while it does have some familiarity to other fantasy books that I've read, toward the end of this book, I really found that it stood strongly on its own, and I do see that there could be potential for development or growth in it in the next books. At least I hope there will be, because it sounds like a really interesting magic system. It is something an individual is born with and allows them to see threadlight, which is essentially threads of light that connect to different things within the world. But not everyone is born with this ability, and it does affect the status of people within the culture and societies of the world. It also impacts a religious aspect within the world, and it was just neat to see all of that come together. The other thing that worked really well is the magic system is explained early on, along with its limitations, its rules, how it works. Everything is broken down early, and this sets up a great foundation for the characters, the world building, and our story. So we kind of get that set up early on in the magic system so that the rest of the book can progress at a medium pace. And with how short the page count is on this, I think the author did really well at being efficient in developing all of these aspects in about 380 pages, at least on the Kindle version I read. So while the world building in this is done well, I did find it gave a smaller world feel to this. It didn't feel like we were dealing with this massive world where we had all these places or countries or names of villages to remember. We just kind of stick into a few main areas within the world, and even then, anything outside of that is kind of in passing in conversations that happen, but we don't actually get to see those in this volume. And I'm hoping that there is potential to see more of the world, because I would like to see more. I'm sure there could be more, but in this installment anyway, we only see a select few places out of the world. So there were some scenes in this that did feel a bit clunky and just seemed maybe a bit off for how our characters are set up. I didn't mind, though. It was minor enough that it did not ruin my experience at all, and I think most readers can either ignore it or might not even notice. And this, I mean, it's a critique, but I think for a debut novel, we have to remember this is a first novel coming out from this author. Everything else outshines those moments. The first few chapters in this were a bit of a gut punch for me, just based on my own personal life experiences, and I ended up relating much more to Chris Valerian in the end compared to Laurel or Alvarax. Now, the nice thing that I actually liked with these three is that we also get to see different family dynamics from all of them. So this just adds a unique narrative to each one of them. It influences their choices differently, and being able to see all of that laid out just added as a special something to it that I feel like I haven't seen in many other fantasy books, or maybe they're there just a bit more subtle. This was just very in your face. They have all of these different family dynamics, and it really does influence their choices in the book. It did end up feeling more plot-driven and sets up for book 2, Stones of Light. Now, I do hope to see more character development because it would be great to see these characters grow and change. There's plenty of books left. There's book 2 and book 3 is coming out, I believe, in August 2022, so this summer. And I just would love to see a more balanced plot line with our character development moving forward. Now, I would say this is an accessible entry into epic fantasy, and there are just so many familiar things that are done well in this to make them their own that I ended up really enjoying it. It had mystery, it had action, it had high stakes, and it has a lot of witty dialogue in some cases too, with a variety of different kinds of characters that we get to see in the cast, along with those fairly common tropes that we get to see in other fantasy books as well, all bundled up into a medium-paced short read. Overall, this was a good read. I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. It did hit a few soft spots in my heart, and it was just fun overall. There were some high stakes, some mystery, adventure, and I'm really curious to see what our author does here with the next books. It just seems like it's going to be all the better, at least, is what I'm hoping. I've already started Stones of Light, which is book 2, because I could not wait. I needed to keep going and find out what happened with the story and our characters. It was just a fantastic read for me. I hope if you guys decide to pick this up that you enjoy it as well. And if you've read it already, let me know. I'd love to hear in the comments down below what you thought of it. If you haven't read it, are you interested in reading it? Is this something that you'd consider picking up? Let me know, guys. I always appreciate hearing from you. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, take care of yourselves.